welcome to another Workshop Wednesday, casual conversations for serious workflows brought to you by schoolofbookkeeping.com, where it's keeping you learning QuickBooks your way. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm good. I hope you can't hear. We have like a weird tornado siren going on outside.
Oh, I heard something in the background, but I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a tornado siren because I don't think we get tornadoes here, but it's some kind of siren. It's weird. We just get those randomly. I don't know.
Yeah, if you blow away, we'll know what's happening. So last week, first I want to apologize because I've been struggling with these live the quality of these lives webinars with trying to figure out bandwidth issues and who needs to click what button and all that stuff. And so I want to know if anybody is watching, if they could reply into the comments and let me know if I look and feel better, because that's what's important. If I sound okay, or if I look, if I'm not pixelated, because I was noticing that our live streams, for some reason, I'm hogging up all the good data, or somebody else is in this house. and it wasn't a very good quality, and I would prefer not to have that happen. So we're trying something different today. So please let us know in the comments if the quality of the stream is better or worse or not, because it's hard to tell when we're trying to do this. So today we're going to be talking about some of the inventory enhancements that have occurred in QuickBooks Online over the past few months, and we'll talk about a specific topic that I want to make sure that everybody is aware of the financial ramifications of, right? Because when I worked at Intuit, it was one of those things that I said it so many times, I felt like it should be recorded. So here we are. We're recording something that I've said multiple times before, and I want to make sure that the message gets across. So now, Rachel, you're very heavily focused on inventory in QuickBooks Online, and you still work in the online space. Where do you draw the line with tracking inventory inside of QuickBooks Online, and where you're looking at other alternatives like Sin7 or Katana or other inventory management solutions?
Well, most of our clients that are tracking inventory don't track it in QBO. And really, it's because of a lot of different reasons, and we've talked about this many times. I do have clients that we've talked before about how if they're really assembling or manufacturing anything, we don't want to do that in QBO. I also have another client that is creating a bundled package, but it needs to have its own individual SKU. It can't do that in QBO because QBO has bundles, but it's really meant for bundling some items together and selling them still with their own individual SKUs. And so that's what he was originally trying to do. And then we realized, no, what he actually does is he buys a container, and then he puts individual items that are not, it doesn't really matter. They're not sold individually, but they could be sold individually. But he puts them in a container, and then it becomes a bundle. But basically what he's doing is he's taking widget A, widget B, widget C, and he's putting them together and creating widget D. That you can't do in QBO inventory. Really, the only thing that you can do is you can put widget A, B, and C together in a bundle and sell them together, but they're still identifying as those three items. So that's bundling in QBO, and that's not
Yeah.
kidding, right? Because kidding is different. So, like, you'll hear me use some of these terminologies that we use, and a lot of them can't be done in QBO. So, you and I have talked before about clients that buy stuff and they don't do anything to that stuff. They just leave it alone and then they resell that stuff. And I typically call those guys resellers. And so if you're reselling stuff, you can do that in QBO, even if you have a lot of SKUs. And so it's funny because I still think there's a lot of confusion out there, because I just got an email even earlier today that somebody was asking me a question about a client of theirs that, you know, they only have 40 SKUs. And I've sort of learned throughout the years, it's not even about how many SKUs. And that's a big misconception. It's really, what are you doing with the items that you're buying? And so that's really what it boils down to, is that's, you really need to know. So all of my clients, sorry to answer your question, this is like a long answer, but
no, this is great stuff. This is great stuff.
All of my clients that buy stuff, that anything needs to be done to retrofit it, change it, assemble it in a way, kit it, or anything, even if he's only got 5 things, it's got to be in an external app. So I do have some clients that simply buy stuff, and they even have, you know, hundreds of SKUs, but all they're doing is buying it and reselling it. It can go right in QBO, and then we can do, you know, individual invoices out of QBO, and it's no problem at all. So that's really the answer. Is I do have some clients that are doing counting the items, the movements of the items, in the increasing of inventory quantities, the decreasing of inventory quantities in QBO. It's very, very few and far between that do, but it can be done. And I did notice when I was poking around the advanced settings the other day, there's lots of things going on with inventory now that they have added. So, and again, it's really not in all QBO subscriptions. I think it's, you know, in some versions, and then in other versions not. So I'm very excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, this is, and we kind of talked about this when we talked about the Intuit Accountant Suite, you know, features, is that the features that these features are designed to address is new, right? Like new people, right? You know, you're not going to see any of these features and go, aha, well, we can ditch Sin 7 because they now support item receipts. No, it's there is likely, you know, these are incremental changes that they're adding, and it's still in service to what you call a reseller, right? Where I buy the stuff, I sell that same stuff, and I don't do anything to that stuff before I sell it, right? And the point that you made about bundles is really, you know, one of those fundamental things about the difference between what QuickBooks in desktop will call an assembly item versus a group. And in QuickBooks Online, they introduce another term called bundle.
And it's really confusing. And I have to say, like, even just what I think still shocks me is that I think the amount of misconception that people think that QBO inventory can do. It's really not much. And I received actually a referral the other day, and the guy had listed out what he wanted to do and track in QBO. He was in Shopify. He was in Amazon. He was in eBay. He was in all of these marketplaces and a sales platform and wholesaling, and he wanted all of this tracked in QuickBooks Online. I had to explain to him that can't be done. It just can't. And so I think that a lot of people really don't know what can be. And I think it's really, really important that we talk about this, because the technology is moving so fast, especially with e-commerce selling. And I just don't know that QuickBooks can keep up with what people are really, truly needing.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed message when you see that there is, you know, marketing on Intuit's website that says, you know, track quantities on hand, right? And inventory tracking as a feature of Plus or Advanced, and
Yeah.
then come to find out, oh no, it's not
It's not for omni-channel e-commerce. It's really not. I mean, it's really, you know what I think it would be great for? Like the good old Craig's landscaping, right? You know, that might sell some gardening tools along with their service, and they need to count, you know, how many they have going on. And there's no reason why it can't do something like that. But I think in the world of, you know, omni-channel e-commerce manufacturing, forget about it.
yeah.
And I'm starting to get frustrated with the, you know, insinuation that that can be done there because it can't.
Right. Right. Like, and we had when we did our workshop series with Katana, we were kind of talking about the advanced inventory functions. And so, anytime that you have those core advanced inventory needs of, I need to track my inventory in different locations,
Yep.
or I need to track the traceability of an item by a serial number or lot number with an expiration date, or I need to track um, landed costs,
Yep.
or the all of these things, multiple units of measure,
Yep.
those types of things. Anytime that ventures into the equation, QuickBooks Online is not going to be that source of truth for inventory tracking, right?
Yep.
So simple inventory tracking of, I purchased some stuff, I have it for a period of time, and I'm going to sell that same stuff later. That is okay, right? But
It's really for the equivalent of like kind of some of those bookkeeping businesses out there that are like that you see on social media. That are like, we start at $375 a month to do your bookkeeping. Asterisk. And and in a perfect world, it's really maybe one business checking account and very, a handful of invoices per month or something like that. But that's what they really mean by that. And it's very, very limited. So, yeah.
yeah. So when you start to, add those aspects, even if they're reselling the same items, the aspect you talked about of in different channels, right? So Amazon, on their Shopify website, eBay, Etsy, right? You go into the integration section in QuickBooks Online and look at that. There's all these connectors, right? Um, that when you're doing all of them, I mean, if you're doing one of them, that might be okay, but if you're doing multiple sales channels and trying to connect them and use QuickBooks Online as your source of truth for inventory tracking, that's going to be a big mess, right?
No.
Because
And a
you
lot
may,
of times they're expecting that that QuickBooks Online will also push the inventory levels back
right,
to those marketplaces and platforms, and that absolutely doesn't happen.
exactly. So,
So
you know,
there's really it's really gotten to the point where if anybody is selling in more than one place and needs to manage their inventory quantity movements, they really need to be in an app. And that's my
yeah, and then QuickBooks then becomes just the resting pit place
yeah.
of the financial impact of all of that movement elsewhere.
Yep. So the stock journal entries will be sent to QBO, decreasing inventory, increasing cost of goods sold, but the movements of the actual quantities
Mhm.
live in the other place.
Yeah. So I'm gonna I put in the chat a link, and I'm gonna share it here. Share my screen here. So we have on School of Bookkeeping, we have an advanced inventory page, right, where we talk about the QuickBooks Enterprise features. We break down the different key advanced inventory functions. But down here is a really cool resource, which has comparing your inventory features by QuickBooks version, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you just kind of scroll through here, you can kind of see on the left side, um, anything that might be, of interest to you and your business, right? So complex inventory, product alternatives to suggest when there's a short. Whoops. What happened? Apparently, you're not supposed to click on it during a live webinar. But price levels based on percentage of sales price, right? It'll tell you, which version has those things. Um, Sales order fulfillment worksheet with batch pick list, right? Which version will have that, right? So you will see a couple no's here. So Pro and Plus or Advanced don't have that functionality, right? So
Right.
this will help kind of guide what version of QuickBooks, if that version of QuickBooks, can handle those native functions for inventory tracking. But that's all here on this page. Assuming you don't click on the spreadsheet, it won't collapse on you. We do have, as part of our course offering at School of Bookkeeping, a inventory fundamentals where we kind of break down these concepts of periodic inventory versus perpetual inventory versus tracking things on hand. The way we break it down by I buy stuff and they sell stuff, or I buy stuff, I do stuff to that stuff, and then I sell other stuff. So we kind of break those concepts down. So if you want to take a look at that, you certainly can. And oh, look, there we are at the bottom.
I have to say that, what, like, I know that inventory can feel scary to people, but I love it. And the only reason that I say that is because, it's one of those things that is so easily misunderstood, and it's so difficult to unravel when there's problems, but it's so satisfying. And it's one of those things where, business owners really can get in the weeds with it. And as satisfying as it feels, helping a client, gain financial insight into their books, or, a lot of the satisfaction that a lot of us feel. Pro advisors, bookkeepers, accountants, we don't do it necessarily just for the money. We do it to help clients understand their business better. And when you get into this area and, you can potentially do some good, shed some light on something that is really a dark and mysterious mess, that's the pinnacle. So I have to say, I love it. I love working in inventory.
Yeah, when you get it right, it's like chef's kiss, right?
Yeah.
It's like the egg sandwich I had today with peanut butter.
Oh, what? Okay, I have to unhear that.
It was actually wasn't so bad. Anyway, so the first thing we want to talk about, and this is one of those things, right? Like this conversation that we're having is the conversation that the accounting profession has pretty much had about, QuickBooks Online is like, this mindset that QuickBooks Online can't do inventory. Well, yes, it does, with an asterisk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really understanding what the limitations, or what the pre-built limitations of the inventory tracking, and if it checks all the boxes for your customer, yeah, it can track inventory. So
yeah,
one of the other common things of QuickBooks Online doesn't have X is, or was, sales orders, right? So
right.
QuickBooks Online never had this concept of a sales order, which in general, a sales order is a non-posting transaction that sits between a quote and an invoice, right? So QuickBooks, in its infinite wisdom, has kind of taken that to be what sales orders are as far as its definition. It's a transaction that does sit between an invoice and an estimate. You can copy an estimate into a sales order. You can copy a sales order into an invoice, right? So there is this workflow of linked transactions to connect between these two.
It's part of the inventory workflow.
Right.
Oh, what I was going to say is, never mind. I was going to ask you a question about sales orders in QBO, but I don't want to derail you. Keep going.
Yeah. So, one of the functions of QuickBooks Desktop when it came to sales orders is the ability to track what's called available quantity. And that available quantity is the the amount that you have on hand minus what you have promised for other things, right? And there could be
Yeah.
in QuickBooks Desktop there could be two promises. Promises could be a sales order, right? So I've created a sales order for an inventory item, so I've promised, that, or my customer has promised that they're going to buy it, but I can't sell it out from underneath them because that would be an awkward situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
And if anybody is an Amazon seller, they know exactly what you're talking about with available quantity and on hand. I mean,
right.
there's different levels to that. It's very, very complex.
Right.
And so, really, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what your total inventory amount is. It's what's available that is most important.
Right. Like, when you go into Walmart, right, and you go to get something and the shelf is empty, what's the first thing you do? You go to find somebody and say, hey, do you have any in the back? Right.
Yep.
Because, the available quantity is essentially what's on the shelf.
Yep.
But the on hand quantity is what they truly have in the store. And so it's quite possible that they have promised, right, a one of those items to somebody else. And that's what sales orders would do, is they would reduce the available quantity so that somebody else who might come in and say, I want that same thing, doesn't buy that out from underneath somebody else, right?
Yeah.
The old days of like, hey, could you put this behind the counter and put
Yeah.
put it on hold? That's kind of, putting that guardrail, right? The reality of, put it in the available quantity, or take it away from the available quantity so this doesn't get sold from somebody else, even though, the physical inventory scanner or whatever it is says, hey, it looks like we have 3 in stock. Well,
Well, it's like the virtual version of the customers in the store fighting for the,
yep.
Teddy
Cabbage
Ruxpin.
Patch Kids. They're elbowing each other for the Cabbage Patch doll or the Wii or whatever the next Christmas fad toy.
Yeah.
Right. Well, here's the thing: is that from everything that I've seen, sales orders in QuickBooks Online don't deduct the available quantity.
No, they don't. They
So
don't.
there's no warning, right? So really, and there may be, right, like that may, just because it's the way things are today doesn't mean that's the way things are going to be tomorrow. But as of today, sales orders don't do that. So
No, and you know what else is in the transaction list under customer? You can't find the sales order. And so that's another thing that's driving me crazy, because I've got a Sin7 client that everything syncs over to QBO from Sin7, and including all of the sales orders. And as a matter of fact, in Sin7, the sales order is what posts the inventory reduction and the cost of goods sold, not the invoice. So those actually come over with an implication behind it, but you can't see those in the customer. The customer transaction list. I don't know why. And so to me, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, so you're saying, so here I have a sales order to 123 schedules. You're saying that if I go to this customer sales order, this sales order won't show?
Yeah, like if you go to the customer profile and then you look at all transactions, you won't be able to see it.
Oh, come on now. This is so trying to get to it. There we go. You got to sneak up on the navigation here. So 123 schedules. I click on this and transaction list.
Yeah, they're not there.
Enough of the time. I don't need this. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
So that's weird. And that, to me, that's a big problem because now, is that a problem for maybe sales orders or invoices that are created in QBO? I don't know, but for a lot of people like us that are using it as a destination for all of these syncs,
Mhm.
I'm bringing in lots of sales orders, and the fact that I can't find them except for a search
Yeah.
is very unacceptable.
Yeah. So to access them, you would go to sales and get paid, and then that's where your sales order list is.
Okay, and then you can just, I guess, filter by customer there.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got
All
your
right,
channel name,
fine.
your
But a lot of times I just go straight to the customer, and
right.
especially if I'm doing
Totally
cleanup
makes
work,
sense.
I want to see all invoices, I want to see all things all at once, and so that's usually my quickest place to go. And so
Hmm.
again, it's just like screwing with the way I do
Right.
things, and Intuit must do it the way I want it.
Well, I mean, it does make sense, right? If you're going to have all of these other transactions, even the non-posting ones show on the customer record,
Yeah.
then
Well,
what's the
if
point of
I'm
putting
looking
the
at
customer on
vendors,
the transaction if it doesn't show on their customer record?
yeah, and if you look at vendors, you can see POs. Why can't
Hmm.
I see sales orders on the
Yeah,
flip side?
yeah, it's definitely one of those. Oh,
Who did
wait,
that?
we forgot to add that.
Yeah. I want to know who did that. I don't like it.
Mhm. So the real start purpose of this, I'm speculating and guessing, right? Because I'm trying to assign meaning to a gap in what in what what they have. So we've identified two gaps. One, sales orders don't show on the customer record, and two, the items that are on sales orders don't deduct
No.
from the available quantity, right? So why then create sales orders, right? So so one, they needed something between a quote or an estimate, a wish list for a promise to sell, right?
Yeah, yeah, because an invoice, if you jump straight to the invoice, it's really you're transferring ownership like with that invoice. And so it makes sense to have a
Right. So you need to
right
have
before that
something in there.
happens. Yeah.
And likely, those gaps that are existing about available quantity and not showing, I would I would assume that those will they'll fill the gaps, as enough feedback is given. It's like, because again, people are going to see these and go like, well, why do I even use this, right?
Mhm.
You do have a couple extra reports when you do have them, so you have a sales order by item list report and the summary of open sales orders. But really, I think where QuickBooks initial need, like the priority that they needed to have, is not just have a transaction between uh, an estimate and an invoice, but a lot of extra fields in here are revolving around shipping, right? So
Yeah.
that is, I think, where this is coming from, right? Because to your point, the transfer of ownership of the item really doesn't happen until it's built, right? And that's where an invoice will come in.
Mhm.
So a sales order, is really necessary for shipping. Like, you don't ship
Yeah.
an
It's basically saying I pulled it off the shelf.
exactly,
You got to
and
have that. It's really important, especially in the warehouse or the garage or the office or wherever you're,
wherever that happens.
holding your stuff. Some of my people are a little smaller and they don't necessarily have a warehouse, but yeah, it's really important for that.
Yeah. So if if you see the ability to create a sales order in QuickBooks, give that feedback right on the sales order, because that will go to the folks that need to address this sort of thing, instead of going into some larger bucket and then having to find their way to the folks working on the sales orders, right? So it's there, but it's there, right?
Yeah.
That's about it, right? So the next thing we want to talk about is um, item receipts. Now, this is something that was, just like sales orders, it just never existed in QuickBooks Online. And an item receipt, its purpose in general is to tell QuickBooks I've received the items, but I have not received the bill for said items, right? So I've actually um, got them. I now have the ownership of these items, or they're on hand, but somebody didn't send me a bill. And how often does that typically happen in?
All the time. And it's so important. Again, part of just the inventory accounting process.
Yeah. So either I mean the scenarios that I've seen is that either they have to prepay for their inventory, and then it takes a while for that shipment to arrive, and then they have to deal with that, or um, they receive it, and then they get a bill, at sometime in a later at some later time. And
Mhm.
typically there's a difference. Sometimes, a lot of times, there's a difference between what was billed and what was actually received. Maybe some items were damaged, or the pricing, the costing might change a little bit. So that's where you really want to keep those items, those events separate, right? You want to have an item receipt to maintain the quantity on hand as to when you received it, and then you want to keep your billing, separate, as separate events, right? Because
Yep.
under normal circumstances, right, even in QuickBooks Desktop, if you didn't have this enhanced receiving turned on, I wanted to bring up an item receipt, and I never got to it. It's going to be here.
Well, and then, as somebody that's worked in these kind of operations forever, um, you just want as much historical documentation as you can, right? Because
Right.
you're always going back and looking at stuff. And so, if you look back and you're like, oh, okay, well, here's an invoice. I mean, sometimes you have to do some digging and figure it out. If you have a purchase order, an item receipt, and then basically saying I've received it, and then a bill, and then a bill payment. I mean, it's just, in my opinion, the more information you have, the better.
Right. And where are they? Where'd they go? So I'm hunting around for it. So when I go into
Maybe you don't have it
expense,
turned on.
yeah, I checked
Hmm.
before. Yeah, I've got item receipts turned
Mm.
on. All right. So while we're here, let's talk about this. So there's this new option in here
I
called
noticed that.
inventory receiving method, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see I've turned it on to item receipts, and you notice that this setting can't be changed. So this is very important to understand, especially for the accountants out there, um, when they're not just when they're dealing with inventory, but when they're dealing with a client who has turned this on. Uh, Bills that affect items are going to be affected, uh, maybe a little bit confusing, and we want to make sure that people understand that. So when you have the inventory receiving method, right? The choice here is either the inventory receiving method will either be on a bill or an item receipt. And if you choose item receipts, then item receipts are always going to be your source of truth for when you've received anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you've received the item and the bill at the same time, you still need to enter an item receipt in order to do that. Because here's the thing: if we let me just resize this here, okay? We go in. Let's create a bill for some inventory items, right? So we're going to choose our vendor named vendor. Hang on. All right, let's find. Oh, I'm in categories, which of course is
Yep.
not going to work, right? Items down here. Okay. Oh, it already populated a whole bunch of items here, based off of vendor already being selected. So I'm going to save this. All right, and let's take a look at the transaction journal, which is the debits and credits behind this transaction, right? And we'll wait for it to show. Spinny, spinny, spinny. All right. So even though I have my accounting set up individually for the items to go to inventory asset, you'll see here the account that all of these items are going to is inventory offset, right? So that's because the item receipt is what's actually recording the quantity on hand. So let's take a look here. So this Beach Mint 10 count gum. So if I go in and I look at that item, so let's go to my product and services, 10 count. Let's find that item. Well, that was a non-inventory item. Okay, so oh gosh, let's see. All right, let me go back here. Where's my history here? Let's go to the bill here. Bring this up. Let's take a look at this. Oh, for some reason, it's the actual T-shirt. My item name and descriptions are all messed up here. So, so the T-shirt AAA black. So let's take a look at that. Find it. All right, take a look at these items. All right, inventory asset account is inventory asset, right? There's sales of product income is the income account. Cost of goods sold is cost of goods sold. So there's no mention on the item as far as inventory offset. And if I run, I just want to double check this bill here. This is, I hate when you can't see the whole column there. Okay, so this is actually the 12 count one. So if I go here to this one, I run a report on it. Did I save it? I didn't. Yes, I did. Run a report on that. Right. There's nothing in here that that shows that this item has been received for this item because it's all being handled as far as the quantity is concerned based off of the item receipt, right? And
so it puts it in an inventory suspense account, and then when it actually arrives, it clears out the suspense.
Right. So that's something to keep in mind, that when you're doing inventory with item receipts, which for some reason I don't know where I go to create an item receipt if I can't see.
Yeah, thanks into it. Yeah, I can never find anything either. So
I can see it from here. Create an item receipt, right? So
that's still going to put something on your balance sheet.
What's that?
It's still going to put something on your balance sheet.
Right. So here's an item receipt that I entered in before, right?
It's really stock in transit is really what it is.
Right. So I'm going to save this here. This date was 2/27/26, and this is the exact same item that we were just looking at. So if I refresh this report, all right, let me just make sure that was the same item that I was looking at. And that's the 12 count. Okay, so let's go down. Oh, here we go. Close that. Oh, there they are. Here we go. Oh, there was a size issue. Okay, so hold on a second. Let's go. All right, let's just double check my items that are on here. large. Okay, so that's L12 count. Okay, so L, where are you? Oh my goodness. Where is it? Okay. I cannot copy. Okay, there we go. Grab it. Make sure we're looking at the right one here. Do. Okay, so it must be this one. Edit. All right, so again, we're just going to take a look here. That we don't have. Oh,
Your naming convention for your sample t-shirt company is very difficult.
I know, and it has to do with it's because I do all these demo things, and I.
This is why a lot of clothing companies will call it like this shoe model is the Jen or the Alyssa because it's you can search it in your system better.
Right. Okay. So here is the item receipt that's recorded, and you'll see down here that there's now a section now for inventory offset, which is where the bills come in, right?
Yes.
So once you've made that change to from item receipt recording the quantity on hand or the bill, then everything that has to deal with items coming in has to start with an item receipt.
And you can't go back, like that's it, like multi-currency, right. It's turned on, it's on.
Right. Once you turn it on, you can't turn it off.
What if you turn off inventory tracking?
I don't think it's going to just hide those functions, right?
But that history of those will be there.
Yeah. Actually, since this is a demo account, let's just see, since that's a good question. What if you just turn off?
Well, I don't think you can turn it off because you got to zero out your inventory first. So
yeah. So if I turn that off, it'll allow me to save it. Oh, yeah. Something's not quite right.
I have learned enough from you to tell you, no, those got to be zero.
So they must be 0 before you turn them, you inactivate them. So you have to zero out your inventory, which is another feature of being able to do physical counts now inside of QuickBooks. So when you're on your inventory setting, you'll see under the More menu, this one doesn't have it for some reason because I'm in a QBOA free account, demo account, as opposed to a real QBO subscription that is using it. But there's under More, there's going to be physical counts and allow you to take, add items and kind of zero them out in bulk. But you could also do that by adding multiple items and then just choosing
batch action.
There we go. Adjust the quantity, and then you could zero it out from there if need be, right? So, but the main thing that we want to kind of drive home here today is that inventory item receipts, once that is turned on in settings, all items that have to do that receiving of items have to go through an item receipt first, and then the bill, even if it happens on the same day, because you're going to have this inventory suspense account, inventory offset, that bills with inventory items will automatically go to, right?
You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking that we'll probably get some more work because of this, because people will mess this up.
Yeah. And
oh gosh, that's horrible.
And likely, the answer from QuickBooks, when somebody has turned it on without realizing the ramifications of that, because they may turn it on and then be like, well, that only equates to one specific situation,
Yeah.
and majority of my other situations
Yeah.
don't require that. But now I've created more work for myself because I have to create an item receipt first and then a bill against the item receipt. So
Oh
now
yeah, and then P.S. That's going to be another reconcilable clearing account that probably is not going to wash out at the end of the month, and then what is still sitting there is going to be really what is in transit, and people won't understand that concept. So I just see lots of confusion down the pike.
Right. And then one other note is that QuickBooks Online has always been first in, first out when it comes to inventory tracking, which is one of the weird things is that you have, this fundamental, perpetual inventory of the things that you can do and a lot of things that you can't do with tracking your inventory. But then first in, first out is the is the costing method, which is a pretty it's more of an advanced tracking mechanism.
Not always appropriate for every single situation either.
Right. But now there is a moving average cost or weighted average, which is typical what you see inside of QuickBooks Desktop.
Which I think is more appropriate with fluctuating costs.
Yeah, and the problem was, right, like if you're moving a client from Desktop to QuickBooks Online, and they are tracking their inventory inside of QuickBooks, they're forced to move to first in, first out.
Yeah.
Which now, if they were not using first in, first out in Desktop, and they are now forced to use first in, first out in QuickBooks Online, that's now a different cost calculation method that they need to tell the IRS about.
Yeah, and I think you've experienced this a whole bunch. Doesn't it go back and revalue the inventory?
Depending on the date that you choose as your start date, right? It may cause a whole havoc of issues when it comes to the cost that weighted average figured out versus first in, first out.
And that could be wildly different, especially in today's day.
So now what's supposed to happen is that when you have a desktop file that is moving from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online, and they have inventory items, it should give you a preference to choose. Do you want to go to moving average cost, or stay at moving average cost, or move to FIFO?
Mm-hmm.
I have yet to see that inside of my QuickBooks Desktop. My guess is I need to make sure I do an update inside of my QuickBooks, but I have seen it inside of QuickBooks Online where there's an option to change.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was going to say, we'll leave that to the migration experts.
Yeah. So after the migration, you can go in and change your cost calculation from.
Where do you do that in QBO? Is there a way to? And then can somebody do that? Like, just let's say they haven't migrated. Can they toggle back and forth between those two?
Yeah, it should be in here, and I didn't see it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Looking in here, and it's not here.
It's advanced.
Maybe it's you're right. Maybe it's that would be a more advanced thing. Nope.
Maybe it's a myth.
I've seen it, but just not in my where I'm looking. Right. Mm-hmm. I've seen it in the past, so I'll find it and I'll put it in the comments of where it actually is. But those are the latest inventory enhancements inside of QuickBooks Online. I'm trying to stop this sharing. I turn it off.
I think it's cool that they've done these enhancements. At the end of the day, I think like my final assessment is, it's my opinion still doesn't change. You still can't do any of the things that I originally mentioned in the very beginning. If you're kidding at all, this doesn't change that. So, I would still say buying items, reselling items, still doing the same things that you and I have talked about before. but this gives you a couple extra things in the inventory workflow that I think would be super helpful if you are managing your inventory in QBO, and if you're qualified to do that with the various things that we've talked about. This can definitely give so for me, like, it's all about what can I see when I go back historically and look for things.
Right.
I like that there's an item receipt, and I like that there's a sales order, and I like these things added. So yay.
They're there, but understand that this is an entry point. It
Yeah.
probably does not have all of the end-to-end workflows fleshed out.
No.
So definitely make sure that if you are seeing these things in use, uh, understand that there are some pitfalls that could come with that, and especially with the enhanced item receiving, or the item receipts, tracking the accounting for the receipt of the items. That will play a big factor in how things are showing up on the financial picture of the item. So um, let us know what you think. Put in the put in the comments when you see this, and also let us know if the stream quality was okay this time. And we'll see you next time on the workshop Wednesday. We'll have so Rachel won't be with us next week, but filling in is our friend Chloe from Relay, where we'll be talking about money movement in Relay. So money coming in and money going out. So we'll be talking about those options in and outside of QuickBooks. So we'll see you next
Yep.
time on the workshop Wednesday.